Hello, welcome back to Learn Economia. In this video, we would be discussing the concept called carbon tax. So we have discussed several aspects with respect to carbon. We have discussed what carbon trading is, and in this video, we are going into the details of carbon tax. So what do you mean by carbon tax? This is a tax which is paid by those firms or those business entities or those industries which produce carbon dioxide through their operation. We know that carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases. So greenhouse gases are those gases that would generate or create greenhouse effect. So this particular tax is designed in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions like carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases like the emissions of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, which is a colorless, odorless, incombustible gas. So this tax is imposed with the goal of environmental protection. This tax is designed in order to remove negative externalities created as a result of carbon emission. We know that we have learned a lot about Pigouvian taxation. In my previous video, I was discussing about Pigouvian tax system. So this tax, carbon tax, so this is considered to be a kind of Pigouvian tax. And we know that carbon is found in every kind of hydrocarbon fuel, which would include coal, petroleum, natural gas, etc. When these are put to use, what happens is that uh, different oxides of carbon would be produced. It doesn't mean that only carbon dioxide is produced. Apart from carbon dioxide, other forms of carbon like carbon monoxide, methane, ethane, etc. are produced. So all these kinds of gases are considered to be what? Greenhouse gases. So uh, let's explain all the details in terms of carbon dioxide. That doesn't mean that carbon would become a harmful substance in forms of carbon dioxide only. There are other forms of carbon as well, as we have already discussed. So coming to carbon dioxide or CO2 in specific, we could see that this is a compound which is primarily responsible for greenhouse gas effect. How this gas would lead to greenhouse gas effect? That's a very important question. So what happens is that heat would be trapped within earth atmosphere. The greenhouse gas like carbon dioxide, which is emitted by industrial pollution, which is emitted with the use of refrigerators, air conditioners at home, etc. So all these would generate, or all these would emit different forms of carbon into atmosphere. We know that if our ACs or if our refrigerators are not free from chlorofluorocarbons, then what happens is that it would definitely emit those kinds of gases that will definitely lead to what is known as greenhouse gas effect. So when these kinds of greenhouse gases are created, it will definitely lead to what is known as warming up of Earth's atmosphere, which will finally lead to what is known as global warming. So, what is the role of government here? When we say carbon tax, the term tax should be given inside double quotation, because whenever there is a tax, this is imposed by whom? It is imposed by the government. So whenever you say tax in double quote, you have to you have to have the idea of government into your mind. So carbon tax, which is a kind of carbon pricing on greenhouse gas emissions, where there is a fixed price which is charged by the government. So if you are emitting different forms of carbon into the atmosphere, in whether it is in terms of carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide or methane or ethane or whatever it may be, it can be other forms of carbon as well, you would be charged a certain price, and the price is passed to businesses to consumers. So if a particular firm or if a particular company is producing a particular product, and as a result of the production of the product, it is emitting certain forms of what to say, greenhouse gases. As a result of greenhouse gas emission by this particular company, the government is imposing a tax upon this company, which would increase the price of the product of this particular company. Ultimately, the price is borne by who? The consumers. The consumers need to purchase this particular product for a higher price. So by increasing the cost of greenhouse emissions, the government hoped to curb the consumption, reduce the demand for fossil fuels, push more companies toward creating environmentally friendly substitutes. So, a carbon tax is thus considered to be a way by the state government or central government or different other kinds of government to exert some kind of pressure over carbon emission without resorting to the what to say, levels of a command economy by which the state could control the means of production, and it would be mandating a halt in production as well as services which would produce carbon emissions. Now, coming to the implementation of this particular tax, we can see that this is imposed on a particular farm or a particular industry or a particular factory or a company which would be emitting a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The same would apply not only to carbon dioxide, as I have already told you. There are many other forms of carbon which are considered to be poisonous and harmful to the earth atmosphere, because it will lead to greenhouse gas emission, greenhouse gas effect, and ultimately it would lead to global warming. So when a tax is levied, we can definitely reduce production. As a result, we can definitely reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, and as a result we can reduce the effect of what? Global warming. Global warming as such could be reduced. So producers, what they do is that they would pass the cost, increased cost in terms of price to the consumers, and ultimately the consumers would be paying a higher price. So as a result of higher price of the product, the consumers, they will reduce their consumption. As a result, the production levels also would be reduced. What are the examples of carbon taxes? We can see that a number of countries around the world have already been introduced this particular taxation system. They have taken several different forms of taxes, but most amount to straightforward kind of taxation per ton of hydrocarbon fuel used. The first country to implement this tax system was Finland, and it was in 1990 that Finland introduced this kind of taxation. And as of April 2021, that levy stood at $73.02 per ton of carbon. Now, the Finns were quickly followed by many other countries, especially the Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, etc., which introduced this kind of taxation regime in 1991, and a rate of $69 per ton of CO2 used in gasoline. Then Norway, with respect to Norway, the tax is among one the most stringent in the world. Coming to the offset of this kind of taxation, we can see that US has not enacted a carbon tax, uh, and this is an area of controversy. Although it has become controversial, carbon tax offsets seemingly have a direct effect on the net carbon effect of individuals and companies. So they are purchased through non-profits that use the funds to cut or remove a specific quantity of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. So this particular tax has been criticized from several points of view. Especially this criticism centers around carbon offsets being purchased for two reasons: to lower a carbon tax levied on a company, or to claim you or your company are non-zero, or sorry, net zero for carbon emissions. So all these things do not mean that you or your company don't emit carbon, but it means that the offsets you purchase negate the corresponding emissions. So there are many mechanisms like these, and these mechanisms are very much popular because it's often considered to be less expensive for a company to buy offsets rather than changing their machinery or manufacturing process. So those rich companies, what they will do is that they would pay tax rather than installing a new machinery. They would pay the tax. This is because they consider the cost of installing a new machinery in order to reduce emissions as more expensive rather than paying tax. Coming to failed carbon taxes, we could see that there have been different forms of carbon taxation, and these have been considered to be successfully adopted by many countries. We have seen how Sweden has adopted it, how Norway has adopted it, etc. But Australia has failed with respect to the implementation of this particular taxation from 2012 to 14. The minority Green Party was able to broker the carbon tax during a period of economic stagnation which occurred in 2011, but the tax never garnered the support of either the main two parties in Australia, which is the left-leaning Labour Party and the centre-right Liberals. So we could see that like most economic initiatives to combat climate change, carbon tax remain highly controversial. When some countries accept this taxation regime without any kind of opposition, there have been many countries which appear as criticisms to this kind of taxation. So that's all about carbon tax. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos, and you can be a part of my Telegram channel and Telegram group to discuss your doubts. I'll be providing the links of the same in the description box. Thank you.